My final guest tonight is a multi-award winning Irish reporter and special correspondent who for 40 years has put himself in the firing line to bring us truth and understanding from the world's most devastating conflicts. From South Africa to Rwanda, the Balkans, Ukraine, Afghanistan and Syria, he has stood head and shoulders above his contemporaries with his vital and compassionate coverage, and we are delighted he's joining us tonight to look back on an incredible career. Would you please welcome Fergal Keane. Welcome to the show, Fergal. You have spent 4 decades going round the world sharing moments of devastation, moments of history. You're stepping away now from the BBC. Why is now the time?
Old age. I'm turning into a cranky old fella. I'll tell you what, when Trump had the bright idea of maybe invading Greenland, the BBC said to me, as they have often done, get on the next plane and go. And I found myself racing through, I think it was Copenhagen airport, to try and catch a flight to Greenland. And whatever way I was running, I tripped and I came crashing down and I hit the ground, felt my knee go, and then had this moment of blinding clarity where I just said to myself, would you ever cop yourself on? You're 65 years of age. Why are you still doing this? Now, I still enjoy the work. I'm intensely curious. I love meeting people. I love the idea that someone pays me to go to, places like Greenland one week, Jerusalem the next week. That I get paid to do that for a living. But I just had to face the fact I was getting tired. Yeah. I was just getting knackered.
I mean, you're mentioning all these other places in the world that you have gone and you've given us the news. I mean, how does it feel to be back here in Ireland and for global events to be having such an impact for us this past couple of days?
Well, I mean, I felt it myself today. I was down in Cork visiting my mother, and then I had to drive up, obviously, to be with your good self, and that meant navigating the roadblocks. Now, in my life, I have done a lot of roadblocks. I've had everything from, in the north, paramilitary roadblocks to a 14-year-old in a Santa suit in Liberia with an AK-47 rifle, high out of his mind on drugs, telling me I couldn't go past. And then today, and there's something that always sticks in my craw. Whoever is stopping me, telling me, you can't go there, that winds me up. But I put my cranky old fella to one side today as I was driving up, and I said, think about, just try and analyse what's happening here. And there was plenty of time to analyse as I was, diverted down different roads. And yes, I think what I see, the journalist part of me sees people who are very frustrated, who have, legitimate grievances about the prices that they have to pay.
And their backs are to the wall.
And their backs are to the wall. All of that I get. But there's another very worrying question, which is for the state. When you cede the right to control the roads of your country, to control access to your strategic oil reserves, when that is taken away from you as the legally lawful power in the land, you're into potentially quite dangerous territory. Because you then ask yourself, where does it end? And that's the problem for the government. And this protest...
I mean, other people would be saying, for the government, if they actually reached out and tried to find an agreement, then, the protest wouldn't be there in the first place.
That's a territory I'm not going to get into, but I'm just sort of analysing the practicalities of it. If you're a government and you're now effectively powerless in the face of this, it is a very, very strong message to any other groups.
Do you think the government are powerless at the moment?
At the moment, they seem, at 6s and 7s about how to respond to this. But the issue is, at some point, other groups are going to look at this, or may become part of a much larger protest movement, and be able to bring the country to a standstill. And that's the fundamental issue, is how you deal with that in a democratic society. I don't have answers. Journalists are terrible for pretending they have the answers. I've always admitted I don't. But what I can do is analyse the situation and see the danger ahead.
I mean, one of the things that you've always done, and which I've always admired, is that wherever you go, you seem to bring a compassion to the story and you show the human part of it. Was that always an intention?
I think it was never a deliberate intention. It was in me. It was how I was brought up. And both of my parents were people. My father was an actor, my mother was an actress and then a teacher.
And
they
your
were,
uncle, of course,
and my uncle John B.
Keane,
A writer and a very big-hearted man. And all of them, you know, they instilled in me the idea that you don't just have rights in a society, you have responsibilities. And that you try and have, I suppose, a sense of decency in the way that you view the way the world should work. You know, and that is not to be a place where the rich and the powerful and the connected can trample all over those who don't have those rights. And I look at the world now and I think, what has happened to those ideals?
You started out reporting up in the north, and I remember it was the late 80s. It was, around the time my dad was killed. And that was very much a baptism of fire for a young reporter. I mean, how much did that mould you? How much did that...
Hugely. And in ways that I didn't quite appreciate at the time. So it was, to come from the south, where the war was a distant rumble over the border most of the time. Occasionally it came here, but most of the time it was something distant that we heard it on the radio, saw it on the TV. And then to go up and within a week of being there, covering the killing of a UDR man, a sectarian assassination in West Belfast, going to funerals in County Fermanagh, and doing that in the 80s on a week-in, week-out basis. I was there at the time your dad was murdered. And seeing the impact of that on a society, which most people in the South had no idea what that actually felt like. The lived experience of the Troubles for people on all sides. So it was a proving ground for me as a journalist, but also a place where I saw that universal truth that all widows' tears are the same. It doesn't matter if you're Catholic, you're Protestant, you're Muslim, you're Jewish. The grief, the personal grief that people feel is the same. One other thing I would say about it is that when the peace agreement came around, I, like many other people, by that stage I was living in Hong Kong. And I thought, my God, when I left the North, I never believed that this could possibly come about. Because I paid too much attention to what the politicians were saying. I didn't pay enough attention to the people who made the decision to stay, who regarded, whether they were Catholic or Protestant, who regarded the North, Northern Ireland, as home. And it was the kind of sacredness of that word, home, for so many people who didn't hate each other, who wanted to build a community. That, to me, more than anything that politicians did, was the fundamental reason why the peace process happened and succeeded.
You then went around the world to a lot of other places that people couldn't leave, places that people didn't want to leave. You saw a lot of trauma, Iraq, Afghanistan, especially Rwanda. I mean, that took a toll on you, didn't it, personally?
It did. And when I look back on it, I ended up in psychiatric hospital, and they asked me to sit down and write out a list of the places I'd been.
I mean, this was recently, wasn't it? This was just a few years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I did, and I looked at the list and I thought to myself, what were you thinking? And the truth was, I wasn't thinking. I was driven by feelings. I was driven by this kind of constant impulse to be where the night was darkest. And that was in me. I think it had been in me all my life. It came, I think, out of, without overdoing the psychology, but it came out of a fractured childhood. The desire to be seen, to have other people tell me what a brave person I was. From being frightened as a kid, I needed to be seen as brave as an adult. And now, that's not to say they were the only things that drove me. They weren't. I was intensely curious. As I said earlier, I had idealism instilled in me by my parents. But all of that led me to a place where, I was frankly addicted to being in danger zones. And people say to me now, well, what's your greatest achievement as a journalist? And I say, I'm alive. I survived it.
You survived the war zones. You also survived your own addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. I was, for quite a period as a war reporter, I was a full-on alcoholic.
And your dad had an alcohol problem as well.
He did indeed. Yeah. But I own my own. Nobody gave it to me. It's something that I had. I'm sober now. My God, since 1999. So it's and actually that is my greatest achievement, because if I wasn't sober one day at a time, I wouldn't have the incredible love that I have in my life now. You know, with family, with friends, with other people who struggle along the road. And I'm always there for friends who pick up the phone and say, I'm struggling with booze. And I wasn't. You know, when you're in the middle of addiction, when you're consumed with yourself, you know, and that's a big part of it is just being utterly, you know, absorbed in yourself. You're not there for friends. And you're wondering then why they're not around. And now one of the great joys is investing in friendship and enjoying the love there is in the world. There's a lot to be said for it, people. Get love wherever you possibly can, because I've spent so long, you know, looking at the worst that people can do to each other, the real horrors. I've got to the stage where I have no shame at all about saying that those lovely words, you know, that, from the Bible, love one another. It's really simple. Love one another.
I mean, you're talking about lovely words. One of the things which you wrote a letter to your son. This was a very famous letter. It went viral before things even went viral. This was 30 years ago, to your son Daniel. Tell us a little bit about that letter.
Yeah.
Why you wrote it, what you wrote in it.
Well, he's 30 now, a fine hardy buck, and he came along one February morning. I was living in Hong Kong, and after he was born, the editor of a programme on the BBC called from our own correspondent, rang me up and said, look, would you write about what it's like having a kid in a foreign city as a foreign correspondent? And I thought, I don't really want to, you know, and drawing attention to it and myself. And anyway, he prevailed on me, and I did. And I wrote the letter with him sitting on my lap as a baby, 6 o'clock in the morning, recorded it. And then, as you say, it just went wild. People were, you know, emailing me. There was just the beginning of email back then. Letters from all over the place, really moving letters. I remember a woman writing to me whose son had been killed on a military exercise in Canada, and saying to me, you know, what it had meant to her. This connection that a father was expressing, this level of emotion about the arrival of a son. And it was just I have a beautiful daughter, Holly, as well. They're both beautiful and a joy to me in my life. But that moment of first parenthood clicked something in me.
I have to say, I remember that letter at the time, and I wasn't a parent. And at the time, I thought it moved me. And, you know, I reread it this week, and it just floored me. Wow. We've got a little excerpt off it here. Would you mind reading?
Okay.
If you can. This is just a little bit of the end.
Okay. Yet now, Daniel, I must tell you that when you let out your first powerful cry in the delivery room of the Adventist hospital and I became a father, I thought of your grandfather, and foolish though it may seem, hoped that in some way he could hear, across the infinity between the living and the dead, your proud statement of arrival. For if he could hear, he would recognize the distinct voice of family, the sound of hope and new beginnings that you and all your innocence and freshness have brought to the world. And
there's just so much in that, and just the intergenerational, your dad not being there to see it.
It's one of there aren't many great things about getting older. Okay, there really aren't. And you know, I'm at the stage now of the bad knee and the bad hip, and I have a touch of that myself. And but one of the good things about it is being able to look back on my life and think that for all the tough things that happened in childhood and the things that I've seen and the mistakes that I've made in my own life, I've been incredibly lucky. You know, I'm blessed. I really mean that. You know, to be 3 years ago at 3 a.m. looking out the window of the locked ward of a psychiatric hospital and thinking, what have I brought myself to? And to be sitting here with you now tonight, talking about it, going home at the weekend, tomorrow, you know, back to London, seeing my kids, walking the dog. It's a blessing.
It really is. We had Majella O'Donnell on a few weeks ago. And she was talking about, how it transformed her, going into a care facility. And I mean, in terms of the person that went into that facility and coming back out again, how did you change?
I think there was late one night, I was inside in my room and I was watching Netflix. And, as you logically would in a psychiatric hospital, I was watching a program about a psychiatrist and his patient, just to cheer myself up, just to escape from the environment. But I was very struck by what he said. He was saying he was talking to this very well-known actor, and the guy was saying, how am I gonna achieve change? And he said, there are three things, he said. First of all, you need to accept that life is full of pain. Life is full of uncertainty. You can do nothing about those two things. They're full of pain, they're full of uncertainty. He said, and number three, he said, you're going to have to work hard every day of your life for your mental health. And that to me was, it's so obvious, but at the time it felt like a blinding realization. Because I think when I first went into therapy many years ago, I thought the therapist was going to be a guru who was going to fix me and give me a pat. And there you are, now you're off and you'll be happy ever after. No, right? The bad news is you have to work at it every day. But if you do, it works. And I can't sit here and say, I'll never stumble again, I'll never have a period of darkness. I don't know. But that's tomorrow, Today I'm doing well.
Look, it is great to have you on, Fergal. It's great to see you doing so well. And thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for telling other people's truths around the world for so many years. And thank you for coming tonight and sharing yours. Fergal Keane, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so